Cincinnati, Ohio, the birthplace of professional baseball. The Cincinnati Red Stockings, America's first professional baseball team. Nearly 2,000 players have had the privilege of being called a Cincinnati Red. Generations of fans have gone through the turnstiles of 7 different cathedrals. A handful of prominent Cincinnati families have been stewards of the franchise. Charismatic figures have been intertwined with hard-nosed leaders taking iconic teams through unbelievable seasons.
Oh my!
Pandemonium down on the field. Back-to-back World Series.
He hit it a ton. It's gone. And the 2010 Central Division Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds.
And we've been blessed to witness greatness.
I, like many other young players at the time, grew up dreaming about the honor to play for the Reds and represent the city of Cincinnati.
The most exciting part about coming to Cincinnati was putting that Reds uniform on.
I've said this many times. Until you have worn a Reds uniform, you have never known what it is to play in the major leagues.
It is always about the team that you play for, and it's about the players that you play with.
Individuals do not win championships. Teams win championships.
But you never realized this all those years. You motivated me to play the way I did.
Knowing that the history and the pride that the city had for years, so many great players, have an opportunity to learn from so many great players before my time.
Because they mean more than just baseball players. They mean respect, integrity, and I'm so proud to be part of that.
But I hope that you know when I put on number 21 and I put on that jersey every day, it's for each and every one of you. And I played my heart out because I love this city, and when Cincinnati was written across my chest, I never took it lightly. And I'm so honored and thrilled to have played here for 8 years in front of the greatest fans, Major League Baseball. Thank you so much. And I love Cincinnati, and I'm so grateful to be back. Boom!
The Cincinnati Reds isn't one story, but a collection of thousands of unique and individual stories interconnected through 150 years of history to create a living legacy that will continue to grow for years to come. It all started in 1869 with the birth of professional baseball in Cincinnati. From May 4th of that year, when the Red Stockings played their first game, to 2019, when the Reds took the field on opening day, the uniforms have progressed dramatically over time. Various fabrics, styles, designs, color schemes, cuts and patches have come and gone, but the city and team each uniform represented has remained the same. This season, as we celebrate the 150th anniversary of this great game in Cincinnati, we pay homage to teams from this franchise's storied history by bringing back 15 of the most iconic uniforms this ball club has ever worn. Our Reds will showcase these uniforms by wearing each one during a select game throughout this summer as we honor and carry on the Cincinnati Reds legacy in front of baseball's most dedicated fan base, Reds Country. Fans, let's take a look at the first 2 throwback uniforms to be worn in the 150-year anniversary season, starting with 1902. The Reds wore this uniform style during home games in the inaugural year of the ballpark that was christened the Palace of the Fans, arguably the most distinctive ballpark ever built. The Palace's architecture was inspired by the great temples of ancient Greece and Rome, and in doing so, spoke to the status of baseball both in Cincinnati and around the country. Notable Reds who donned this uniform included Reds Hall of Famers Jake Beckley, Sam Crawford, Bob Ewing, Noodles Hahn, Dummy Hoy, and Cy Seymour. The 1911 season was one of several years in the first 2 decades of the 20th century that the Reds adopted a solid navy blue color scheme for their road uniforms. While the Reds limited the all-blue look to this relatively compressed time period, the club's incorporation of navy blue into its uniform color scheme recurred frequently into the mid-1960s. Notable Reds who donned this uniform include Rafael Almeida, Bob Bescher, and Armando Marsans. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1912 uniform. This minimalist style was chosen as a home uniform design for the 1912 season, a year most noted as the debut season of Redland Field, the new ballpark the club built on the same site as its demolished predecessor, the Palace of the Fans. Redland, renamed Crosley Field in 1934, proved to have much more staying power than the Palace, serving as a Reds home ballpark until the middle of the 1970 season. Notable Reds who donned this uniform include Rafael Almeida, Bob Bescher, and Armando Marsans. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1919 uniform. The Reds of 1919 stand as one of the great clubs in franchise history. The team won 96 games against only 44 losses for a winning percentage of .686, the best of any Reds team since 1900. The Reds won the franchise's first National League pennant by a comfortable 9-game margin over the second-place New York Giants and squared off against the White Sox in the World Series. To celebrate the Reds' first World Series appearance, the club ordered new uniforms for use in World Series play that featured a slightly altered Sea Reds logo on the jersey fronts, as well as a more pronounced claw shape to the C that appeared on cap faces. The Reds defeated the White Sox 5-3 in the best-of-9 series, but their triumph was tainted by the discovery, almost a year later, that 8 members of the White Sox had conspired with gamblers to lose the series. Future Reds Hall of Famers Rube Bressler, Heine Groh, and Ed Roush were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1935 uniform. On May 24, 1935, the Reds wore this uniform style when the club hosted the first night game in the history of Major League Baseball. The team's successful execution of baseball under the lights proved to be a financial windfall for the team during the Great Depression, resulting in a much-needed increase in attendance. The very plain uniform worn by the club during its home games in 1935 marked the last time the club has taken the field at home without the word Reds or a wishbone C appearing on its uniforms. Future Reds Hall of Famers Paul Derringer, Ivor Goodman, and Ernie Lombardi were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1936 uniform. The style that was known as the Palm Beach by the uniform's manufacturer, Cincinnati-based Goldsmith & Sons, was an attempt to offer players a lighter weight alternative to the usual heavy flannel jerseys. The open weave fabric construct of the Palm Beach was designed to make the uniforms more breathable during the hot Cincinnati summers. The uniqueness of the uniform was not limited to its fabric, as it also incorporated red pants for the first and only time in club history, and a unique script representation of Reds on the jersey front. The Palm Beach jersey was worn sporadically as an alternate uniform from 1936 to 1938, but the uniform ensemble that included the red pants was only worn during the 1936 season. Future Reds Hall of Famers Paul Derringer, Ernie Lombardi, and Ivor Goodman were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1967 uniform. This one-year style uniform was the last Reds uniform to incorporate pinstripes until the club brought them back in 1993, and was also the last locally manufactured Reds uniform, as the Cincinnati-based McGregor Company, a longtime supplier of Reds uniforms, ceased manufacture of Major League uniforms after the '67 season. The last uniform produced by McGregor was the first Reds uniform worn by Johnny Bench, as the Hall of Fame catcher made his Major League debut wearing this uniform style on August 28, 1967 at Crosley Field. Future Reds Hall of Famers Tommy Helms, Jim Maloney, Gary Nolan, Tony Perez, and Pete Rose were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1969 uniform. In 1969, Major League Baseball celebrated the centennial of the national game. MLB officially identified the game's year of origin as being 1869, the year during which the Cincinnati Red Stockings fielded an all-professional team and played their entire schedule without losing a game. Virtually every club in Major League Baseball took the field with an MLB patch on its uniforms as part of the anniversary celebration. In Cincinnati, the Reds designed a club-specific centennial logo that was painted on the walls at Crosley Field and appeared on commemorative merchandise items. The historic nature of the 1969 season was not limited to the anniversary celebration, as that year also marked the last full season the team played its entire home schedule at Crosley Field. Future Reds Hall of Famers Johnny Bench, Tommy Helms, Jim Maloney, Gary Nolan, Tony Perez, and Pete Rose were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1976 uniform. The Big Red Machine cemented its status as one of the greatest teams in the history of the game with its second consecutive World Championship. The club that was anchored by its legendary Grade 8 starting lineup made history by becoming the first team to sweep both the playoffs and the World Series. The Reds' historic season played out against a backdrop of America's bicentennial and the centennial of the National League, which had been formed in 1876. To commemorate the league's centennial, most of its member clubs wore a commemorative uniform patch that featured the centennial logo. Future Reds Hall of Famers Johnny Bench, Dave Concepcion, George Foster, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, and Pete Rose were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we continue our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1990 uniform. The 1990 Reds were the last of the three Reds World Championship teams to win a championship in this uniform style, which had first been introduced in 1972 and had undergone only minimal alterations since its debut. The 1990 Reds were in first place every day of the season and capped their impressive run with a sweep of the heavily favored Oakland A's in the World Series. As that series was being played, an alliance of military forces led by the United States was massing in the Middle East in response to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in Operation Desert Shield. To show support for the military during the series, uniforms of both the Reds and the A's were affixed with American flag patches, in addition to the 1990 World Series logo patch. Future Reds Hall of Famers Tom Browning, Eric Davis, Barry Larkin, Jose Rijo, and Chris Sabo were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform. In celebration of our 150th anniversary, we conclude our throwback uniform campaign with a closer look at our 1999 uniform. For the first time in club history, black became a primary element of the Reds' uniform color scheme in 1999. The new look coincided with a return to contention as the team bounced back from back-to-back losing seasons to post 96 victories and force a one-game winner-take-all contest against the New York Mets to determine which club would earn a wild card playoff berth. In an electric atmosphere at sold-out Riverfront Stadium, the Mets shut out the Reds 5-0, but the loss did very little to dull the excitement of a season that was as exhilarating as it was unexpected. Future Reds Hall of Famer Sean Casey and Barry Larkin were among the Reds greats who wore this uniform.
You can't tell the story of Cincinnati without Reds baseball. Because here, on the banks of Ohio, is where it all began.
So here's Burdick and here's Bruce.
Get it a time, it's gone!
We know about the history, the traditions. We've celebrated the triumphs and honored the legends.
belongs to the
We are the
Cincinnati
birthplace
Reds.
of professional baseball.
Sparking the passion of America's pastime. So yeah, we recognize everything that brought us to today.
But that doesn't mean we're living in the past.
It's time to flip the switch.
Time to let the world in on the rest of the story.
Take notice. Cincinnati is rising up with the united vision marked by bold innovation. Now, we lead it tomorrow.
By lighting the way to what comes next.
East Side.
West Side. Together, fueled by collective energy, we will connect, evolve, and honor what we love most.
This city.
This team.
Harnessing the power of red, igniting the fire and pride in a new generation.
Who we were? Nah. It's about who we are. And who we will be. Cincy. Cincy.
Let's power up!
Open these eyes, how they're hiding from the